listening to the Mark Bradford Alchemy for Life podcast.
You know, a metaphor is like a car that's like wait, what? Well, hey there. Welcome back. Stay in your lane. Has someone ever told you that? When they said it, they most certainly were using it as the metaphor. And of course, we all know what metaphors are. Oh, really? Well, tell me what a metaphor is then. Tell me what a metaphor is without using an example of a metaphor. So you can't say, well, when you say X, it means Y. No. What is a metaphor? Okay, I'll save you that. Let me explain to you real quick at the risk of insulting some people. But most people know what a metaphor is because they've seen it being used. But a metaphor is essentially using objects and things to replace other things to essentially make a point using almost an analogy. Raining cats and dogs, things like that. See, I had to revert to examples. So the staying in your lane metaphor, it comes from a physical car or other vehicle being in a lane and the danger of veering from your lane. And they apply that to people who have a skill, a job, a profession, a goal, and they say stay in your lane. Because what happens if you don't stay in your lane? Well, you know, you could get into an accident, you could hurt someone, you could kill yourself or another person or both. And in the business world, if you don't stay in your lane or in whatever world you're in, creative world, not staying in your lane means that you lose business or you compete with yourself or something else happens. You go out of business because, you know, you're supposed to be doing one thing and you do another, right? But if you're going to be using that analogy, you have to use the entire analogy because you can't even go to the grocery store and stay in your lane, can you? I mean, you eventually have to go into probably the left lane, the fast lane, if you want to turn left because that's how you get to the store, or get on the freeway and you probably shift lanes 2 or 3 or 4 times because it suits you. And it may come up that you switch to a different lane this time, but the last time you didn't. And why did you switch this time? Well, because the traffic was slow, because there was an accident, because the road was literally blocked, right? Now, there are those people that do stay in their lane, both metaphorically and literally. And they're the slow, methodical drivers. And the comparison to that would be someone you know who has their own little business and they're a plumber, and they've always been a plumber and they do a very specific set of plumbing things. I don't do that. I'm not a sink unclogger. I'm a plumber. You know, I don't do that sort of thing. And yes, I literally have contacted a plumber about like unclogging a sink, and he's like, well, I don't do that. Oh, okay. The people in the lane drive methodically and slow, and they stay with the traffic like they're in a school of fish. And the people who are in business metaphorically may say, I'm a plumbing guy, I just plumb, and my son's going to follow in my footsteps to do the same thing. We have ample clients, I don't really need to market, and that's the end of it. And that's fine, right? The people who get the bad rap for not staying in their lane in the physical, literal world are people who are veering left and right, you know, zing, zing, this is not going fast enough, I want to go 5 times as fast. And you're like, wow, what a jerk. What a dangerous idiot to do that, you know, cutting people off and so on and so forth, not even signaling, which is a big pet peeve of mine. The metaphorical version of those people would be somebody who, you know, should be supplying a service or something and gets distracted and says, it's kind of boring, I'm going to do this, right? You know, the guy who says, hey, you know, I'm selling security systems with the best security systems in the entire planet. Oh my God, you got to buy my security system. And you go, let's talk in like a month or so. I don't know right now. And then a month later, you're like, hey, that security system stuff. And he goes, what? Oh yeah, I don't do that anymore. I sell insurance. And you're like, wait, what about security systems? Can I at least, no, I don't want to talk about that. I only do insurance now. And so you're like, well, okay, how about we talk in a few months? I'm good on my insurance now. Maybe I'll switch agents or things. And he's like, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing in the world. You're like, okay. So that's the lane switchy guy who is comparable to the car zooming around dangerously cutting people off. But those are kind of few and far between. And should we really run our life based on that limited scope of the metaphor? I mean, Should you always drive in the center lane going like the minimum speed necessary to get to your destination? Or should you try a new route? Should you try the scenic route once in a while? Maybe you try the scenic route. And maybe the equivalent metaphorically of the scenic route is different kinds of clients. Like you do a certain thing for clients, but there's a certain kind of client that's extra enjoyable to work for. Well, maybe more of those clients could show up for you, And you just continue to take the scenic route. And everyone's like, well, the scenic route is the longer one. Yeah, but it's so much more enjoyable. And maybe the same thing with the clients. Maybe it takes a little bit more time for them, but it's just much more enjoyable. Let me give you another example. If someone has a delivery service, and maybe his name is Fry, who knows? He has a delivery service, and basically he gets, people call and say, can you deliver this little package on your bike or whatever? And he's like, sure, why not, And then like he does a little better now. He has a car, and then he has a truck. And so like he's basically an independent delivery guy, delivery man who comes by and delivers packages and so forth for people. I mean, he's not going to compete with the big guys, but he has that, right? And then one day, someone says, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm probably wasting your time, sir, but like, I wanted you to deliver this package, but it's ready to be delivered, but it's just taking up space here, and I don't need it delivered until like next Thursday. In fact, if I deliver it now, that's not good. I just wish I had a place to store it. And he says, well, I can do that. You don't know, and you can just see his car metaphorically go into a different lane. Because now, for this one guy, he makes an exception, and he stores the package first, and he charges them. And the guy's like, wow, I would love that, really? How much would that cost? I mean, I'm sure it costs like a lot. So here, how about this amount? And the client suggests an amount of money that's 3 times what the guy would have charged. And he's like, okay. And the guy's like, oh my God, thank you. And he stores the package, and he has some storage space. So it costs him nothing to just keep the package there. And obviously, he's thinking about liability, insurance, and all the other stuff. But right now, he's like, no big deal. He stores the package, he delivers it, the guy's thrilled. The guy's like, well, can you do that again, or was it an exception? And he's like, well, sure. And now he does this for this guy every time he does a delivery. And then so now he starts to tell his other clients, hey, do you want me to store it first? And they're like, well, how long can you store it? And he says, how long do you need me to store it for? And now suddenly, storage and delivery is his thing. And now the storage thing becomes a bigger part of his business. Now he left his lane, and he comes back to the other lane once in a while, but for the most part, he stays in the other lane, which he never would have discovered had he not left his lane. Do you see what I'm doing here? Do you see how I'm like sort of like systematically destroying the whole stay in your lane thing? And now you can say, but Mark, the people that tell you that are people that they know they're focusing on their product, and they don't want to dilute their brand, and this and this and this. And I would say you could try to point to somebody who wants to stay in their lane, who is wildly successful, but it will be hard to find someone like that. When you think of like people who are wildly successful, people who are charismatically wildly successful, I'm sure there's a number of names that come to the top. And all those people who do that don't do one thing. I mean, right? Let's take a certain Mr. Elon Musk. What does he do? Well, he has SpaceX, and he does the Powerwall, and he does solar panels that are actually roof tiles, and he does electric cars, and he also does AI, right? Like he's in 5 lanes or more. So you can try to point to someone who's wildly successful, and I probably would think that you'd come up with someone who's actually a creative. Somebody who's an artist, like somebody who just does oil paintings that are just out of this world. It takes a lot of time. They love it, and that's what they do. And maybe once in a while they do charcoal, they do something else, but it's for their own pleasure. But I'll bet you that's one of the few examples in which you can find someone who truly stays in their lane, and that's the end of it. Because I'll bet you that people who tell you to stay in their lane, if their business is not so successful or they try to change with the times, if you check in with them in 5 years, due to the business changing rapidly or necessity, I'll bet you they're not in their lane anymore. With the exception of the homegrown plumber or the handyman person or people like that. So My advice to you is to be in whatever lane that serves you. And it serves you because it makes you happy and because it makes you money. And you determine the formula of which one of those two things is important. So, drive safe, everyone, metaphorically and literally. Hey there, thanks for listening. I always appreciate your feedback. I really, really do. Wanted to let you know that the Sword and the Sunflower audiobook won as Best New Author for 2020. My podcast is available wherever you consume podcasts, and my books are available on Amazon. Take care.